Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast, where it's all about turning your job search into a slam dunk. Your host is Angela Copeland.
Welcome to the Copeland Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Angela Copeland. Live on the phone with me today, I have Dr. Charles Michael Austin. He also goes by Dr. Chaz. Dr. Chaz is the Director of Career Development at the Musicians Institute in Hollywood and is the author of a new book for sale on Amazon called 101 Ways to Find Work and Keep Finding Work for the Rest of Your Career. He also holds a doctorate in organizational leadership from Pepperdine University's Graduate School of Education and Psychology. Dr. Chaz, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, great to be here, Angela. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think I mentioned to you before we met, I think it was probably 10 years ago, and you actually coached me, and I found it to be very helpful. So I'm so glad that you're able to kind of share your insight today with my listeners.
I must have done a great job because you've done terrifically well in your career, so yay for both of us.
Yes, thank you. So you've been career coaching for many years. What is the very first step that you talk to your clients about when it comes to putting together a career game plan? Like, where should they really begin?
The first step, and when I sit down with our students here at Musicians Institute, the first question I always ask is, what's your goal? What are you looking for at this point in your career specifically? And how do we target your marketing efforts, both oral and written, toward that end? Mm-hmm. But that's the first step. What are you looking for now? Not long-term, now. What do you need? Do you need a job now? Do you need a money job now? Is there some kind of a plan? So that's the first thing.
Okay, and what do you find that most of your clients or your students there, what is usually their goal?
Well, at Musicians Institute, we are in the center of Hollywood, a block away from the Kodak Theater where they hold the Oscars every year. So a lot of kids come from all over the world, and they want to be rock stars. They're 17 years old, and that's great. But right now, on your way to becoming a rock star, what is it you want to do? How can you earn a living as a musician? What can you offer to the marketplace? What specific set of skills do you have that someone will pay for? Can you teach? Can you play in a studio? Can you work with people as an engineer, a producer, etc.? What specifically can you do for others?
Absolutely. That's great. So what advice do you have for those job seekers who are really unsure of what they're looking for? I mean, they need something that's going to pay the bills, but they have no idea what it should be.
Got it. A lot of people have been there and are there, and I know it's a tough place to be. I've been there at times in my life as well. And I've done this at Pepperdine and other schools at which I've worked. The first thing you have to look at, if you're a millennial, you'll have 6 or 7 careers in your life. And that's now true for older folks as well. So I wouldn't be concerned about finding just the right job or just the right career. If you're unsure, find 3 industries in which you think you'd like to work and pursue them. First, by meeting people in the field and learning what it's really like to work in that particular area. And then find work. Whatever it happens to be, it won't be perfect. Don't worry about it. There's no such thing as a perfect job. If there is, it doesn't last long because you're going to have many careers and do many things, and it's a very volatile workplace. It will continue to be mergers and offshoring and layoffs and so on. Just find work, something you can live with, something that's satisfying. It may not be the true love of your life, but it's not like a marriage that lasts 40, 50 years. It's a job. If you're lucky, it may last 5, and then you'll be doing something else in another 10 years. That I just got an email from a colleague I haven't seen in 10 years, and he said, I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and I would never have thought you would have ended up there, and neither would I. So not something to worry about. Get to work.
Right, absolutely. So you mentioned honing in on, say, 3 different industries or 3 different types of jobs. Do you have recommendations on, if you're really not sure what those 3 should be, sort of how do you assess, when you're looking? How do you decide what they should be?
Well, you don't really have to make a choice, given there are three different areas, but you can tell right away what you don't want to do. And I've done this with students and clients. Let's pick three areas. Plumbing as one, and they go, no, not interested in that. Well, what would you be interested in? Well, I've always kind of liked education. I've always kind of liked media. I've always thought maybe advertising. Good. Now we have three. Now your next step is to start talking to people in your database, friends and colleagues, and sitting down with them in person and learning about the field or learning about who you can meet who works in those fields to learn what it's like. And then they will recommend publications you can read, conferences you can go to, meetings you can attend, and if there's a resonance, if you start to feel comfortable, if you start to feel interested, if it's something you look forward to, then choose that one. And let's say it's education, and start. The last words in my book are have fun, hang out, get work. So if you are around those people and you feel a resonance and you're interested and you're stimulated and you look forward to going to the meetings, choose that. And don't sweat it. Is this the right, people worry, is this the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Go with it, okay? Because even if it's the right thing, in 10 years you'll be doing something else. Don't be terribly concerned.
Well, I know a lot of job seekers, they only have so much time that they can sort of spend on this process. What do you think is the most important thing that they can be focused on, since they do have a limited amount of time?
Their colleagues and friends.
Okay.
I have hiring authority here, and I'm like pretty much every other person who hires. I hire people who I know, who I trust, who are referred by people I know and trust. So what you want to focus on is the people who love you, the people who care about you, and have them essentially be your job agents and make recommendations and referrals and introductions and give you ideas, because they would like to see you working. And if you have, when you start meeting with them, some sort of a goal, I'd like to learn more about advertising. I think it's something I'd like to work in. I've always been interested. Who do you know in the advertising business that I might meet with who can be a mentor? And they'll be happy to do that. And then eventually work will appear, because you'll find out where you fit. You'll be guided by people who actually work in the field, referred by people they trust, and eventually it will turn into work of some sort in that field.
I totally agree. I use a similar process with my clients, and I had one who came to me and had, no idea which industry she wanted to go toward, and ended up meeting with someone in corporate, someone at an agency, someone at a nonprofit, and someone at a startup. And I remember she came back, and after she met with someone from corporate, she said, "Oh my gosh, did you know that they sit in cubicles all day long? That sounds horrible." And I said, "Yeah, okay, well, we won't look at corporations anymore." And then she went and she talked to somebody at an advertising agency, and she came back and said, "Wow, I think those are my people, in the agency world." And I said, "Okay, well, let's see if we can get you in front of a few different agencies." And sure enough, she pretty quickly secured a job at an agency. So I think for her, it was a matter of what feels right and what, do you hate, and really paying attention to those feelings as you meet with these people.
Yeah, because you have to live there. Is it a place where you feel compatibility with the other folks that are in the field, where there's a connection? Your clients are lucky to have you. Let me say that. And I'll share a similar story. I was a professor at Loyola Marymount University, and in a communications course, I was teaching one of the students. Unfortunately, she was a senior. I wish I'd gotten to her when she was a freshman. She was interning at CNN. Her dream in life was always to be an on-air reporter at CNN. And the assignment I gave her was to meet with some of the corporate executives at CNN and find out what it's really like. So much of what I have to do, and I'm sure you as well, is to disabuse people of the fantasy about what it's like to work somewhere. And one of the executive producers, a woman, took her to lunch and told her the way it really was.
Yes.
and that she would have to sacrifice her personal life to make it. If she could do that, if that might happen, there's an outside chance that she would make it, where she could be on-air talent. She came into the next class crying because her dream had been shattered. She called her parents and said, I've always wanted to be on-air talent at CNN my whole life. Well, I'm not going to do that anymore, because she realized what she was willing and not willing to do. The more people you talk to who will give you the straight story, the straight scoop on what it's like to work in the industry, the more you can take off the blinders and have a real sense of what you're getting into and where you fit and what you don't want.
Absolutely. And, I think the thing that's interesting, and I talk with my clients about this, is when you talk to someone in a casual setting, like the person from CNN that you mentioned, they will tell you all the details. They'll tell you what they love and what they hate. But when you go in for an actual interview and you're in their office and that person is being compensated to interview you and potentially convince you to come to work there, the chances that they're going to tell you the negative things about the company are very low. So that's really not the time to kind of get that information. You need to do your homework in advance, and you'll be surprised. I mean, as long as you're meeting with them in an informal way, they will share those details with you.
Every culture on this globe, the process of breaking bread with someone breaks down barriers. So I always tell the students here at Musicians Institute, coffee, breakfast, lunch. Go meet people in your field. Have coffee, take in a breakfast, take in a lunch, whatever you can afford, and it will give you an opportunity to let your hair down, have them let their hair down, and really tell you the inside dope on what's going on in the field and how it really works, and be prepared to be shocked and disappointed. But better up front what it's like. It ain't like in the movies. But if you know that and you're still interested, keep pursuing it.
Great. Yes, that's great advice. So as you work with people and they're going through this process, what are some of the struggles that you see most job seekers face, like the biggest struggles?
Lack of patience, which if you're in desperation about money, I can well understand. They expect instant results. I did what you told me. I met with this person and I didn't get a job. Well, I say it's like farming. You plant the seeds, you nurture them. You don't stand over them and say, grow, and expect something to happen. But the more seeds you plant and the more you take care of them, the more people you meet, the more relationships you develop and deepen, and the continuity of seeing these people on a regular basis at meetings, at lunches, at breakfasts, at conferences, you become part of the culture, and something eventually does pop. And someone says, oh, it's great to see you again. You mentioned you were looking for a coordinator position at an ad agency. Let me introduce you to my friend Mary, because she just happens to be looking for someone, and I know you, and I recommended you to her, and why don't you and Mary have a chat here? Mm-hmm. And Mary might well hire you because you're good enough. That's a concept that people have trouble understanding. It's not necessarily the best person for the job. It's the person who fits on the team. And if you've been recommended by Mary, who's a good friend and trusts the person that introduced the two of you, that may be good enough for her.
Oh, I agree. And I think the other thing, too, is that the more specific you become in your requirements about the job you're looking for, sometimes the longer it can take, because the fewer of those jobs there are available. And so I think sometimes accepting ownership, too, because, I've met with clients in the very first meeting, and they come in and they say, well, I worked with a resume writer who did my resume for me, and I haven't gotten a single job, and man, that resume writer was awful. And it's like, you have to get out there and do the work. It's on you. It's not on a resume writer or someone else. You need to take responsibility.
It's about relationships. People hire who they know and trust. Mm-hmm. I hire who I know and trust. I will go to my network of colleagues and say, this is what I'm looking for. Who do you know? And that's often 90% of the job for me. They'll bring someone in, or they'll have them send a resume. I like the resume. I'll bring them in. If the team likes them, and in my group at Musicians Institute, when we hire someone, the team hires them. because I want to see how they're going to fit with everyone. It's not just top down, the boss said we should hire this person. I need to see that they're going to get along. And the referral itself goes such a long way to doing that. I tell people, use your friends and colleagues and have them be your agents. And have them help you find work. Everyone wins. You win. The person they referred to wins because they can call and say, wow, this person you hired, she's just, that we hired, that you recommended, she's just great. Thank you so much. So everyone wins. It's a benefit to your colleagues to help place someone in a position. I have a colleague who says, I want everyone I know working. That way they're all in a position to help me.
Absolutely. So when I met with you about 10 years ago, I noticed one of the things that was unique is that you have a really creative approach to sort of finding a job. What is, can you give me an example of sort of a creative story with one of the clients that you've worked with over the years in terms of something they did creative to secure a job?
Yes. I was at Woodbury University and working with the business students, and one of them came in to me and said, I have a job interview with a company, a financial company, and I just wanted some pointers about the interview. Can we do a little mock interview? And I said, do you know the name of the person you're interviewing with? And he said, yes, it was one of the senior executives. I said, let's look on the website, because very often companies have bios of the senior executives. And sure enough, they did. They had a photograph and a short bio on the person he was meeting with. And at the end of the bio, it said that this executive was very involved in a charity for Wilson's syndrome, which neither of us had heard about. I said, given I'm a writer, and you have to understand and also do a lot of public speaking, people remember the first and last thing. So if that's the last thing in the bio, that's important to this guy. It's a short bio. Find out what Wilson's syndrome is and ask him. And at the interview, he did just that. And the executive said, you're the first person who noticed that and asked me about it. That's a nervous disorder my wife has. That's why I'm interested in it. But because you showed such attention to detail, I've interviewed 12 people already. I have another 10 to go. You're getting the job, and hired him on the spot. Attention to detail.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's so great. I love it when job seekers go out and sort of search around and look up information about the people who will be interviewing them, because I think often you could be sitting in a room with someone too, and at face value, they may look like someone you might not have a lot in common with normally, but if you read their bio, you may find some way in which you relate to them, and it can help to calm your nerves. Or in an example like you gave, you can bring something up to the person during that interview to where they can connect with you on a different level besides just, work facts.
Mm-hmm. It's turning them from strangers into colleagues. I call them points of resonance. We have something in common. One of the people on my team was referred to me by a colleague of mine at Loyola Marymount University. Another person on my team, we share the same career coach at Pepperdine University. She's got a master's in education. I have a doctorate in education. So we're looking for how we're connected, and that's the job seeker's job, is to find that. Because again, I want to feel that you're a colleague, that we have something in common. And it's important to highlight that in the resume, which is why resumes are detailed, but it's also very important in conversation to mention, oh, you're from New York too, me too, we have that in common. You're a Cubs fan from Chicago, go Cubs. I had a friend who got a job that way, believe it or not. Because they were both fans. One was a fan of the Jets and the other was a fan of the Giants, and they had something to talk about, and they had that commonality of being from New York there. And people will hire you for the oddest of reasons, and you want to find that. That's part of your brand, and you need to speak about it, you need to write about it, you need to point it out to people, because very often that's the thing that will get you the job. All other things being equal, people don't have time to know you in 45 minutes. They may well say, you know what, I like the guy from New York, the Jets fan. Even though I don't like the Jets, I like that guy. Bring him back in. That's what they remember.
I think that is an excellent point. I had an interview a few years ago, and I was interviewing with a person that was known for being an especially difficult interviewer. And I was told that, this could be really tough interview. And I looked the person up. I noticed that they went to Harvard for undergrad. And it just so happened that my university, I went to RPI, which is in upstate New York, for undergrad. Our schools played one another in ice hockey. We're both in the Ivy League for sports. And I brought that up to him, and we actually spent an entire half an hour talking about ice hockey. It was an awesome interview. He gave me, a huge recommendation. It was not difficult, and we really never talked about anything else. So, I mean, it's a great point that you make.
Yeah, companies don't hire people. People hire people.
Mm-hmm.
And people have to feel secure and that they can trust you and that you're cool and that you'll work as part of the team. That's what's most important. Sometimes resumes even get in the way, and if the relationship is deep enough before the interview and the referral is strong enough, the resume almost doesn't matter. RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, yes?
Yes, that's right.
Yes. I'm from New York, too.
Right.
We have that in common as well.
Yes. Yes. Great school, full of engineers. So aside from the kind of this sort of research about the person that's going to be interviewing you, what other kinds of things can a job seeker do to prepare for an interview once they've been invited to come in and actually do an interview?
Mock interviewing. There are tons of questions in my book. That's probably the most important thing we do here for our students at Musicians Institute. Once the resume is out of the way and we have something to work from, then it's sitting down and teaching them how to pitch themselves and tell interesting stories about what it is they do, what their goals are, and most especially how they can be of service to the person interviewing them. The first thing I tell the students is there are two people in this interview, you and me. I'm the only one that counts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what you want. I'm not running a camp. I'm sure you want to work in a creative environment where you grow your career. That's nice if we can make that happen. But I'm running a business, and I want to know specifically what you can do for me. So it shifts the entire conversation 180 to my needs and what you can do for me. And the students and my clients get very comfortable, or much more comfortable, let's say, in talking about themselves and talking about how the connection is there and why it would make sense for this person to hire them. This is great. You're approaching me professionally. You've done your research about the company. We have people in common. We both went to RPI, and you know what I need, and you know what you can do for me. This is great. Can you start Monday?
Right.
Doesn't have to be an arduous and difficult process. It can be that simple.
Right. And you mentioned something there that I think is an important point. You mentioned that you kind of tell stories in the interview. And I think a lot of times after the interview, the person that you interviewed with remembers how they felt about you. It wasn't that you got every question 100% perfect, but it was sort of your overall demeanor, how you talked to them, how you told these stories. I think sometimes we worry so much about maybe not answering exactly perfect that we get so uncomfortable during the interview. And that's when, you don't look like someone who would fit in with the organization, or you just don't, I don't know, it seems like a mismatch and you don't really represent yourself. So I think I really like that advice you mentioned about your kind of, you're sharing this information in the form of stories.
I hate formal interviews, and I recommend to everyone I work with and all the students at MI that they try at all costs to avoid them. I can't know someone in 45 minutes. I'll wind up hiring my colleague's nephew anyway, because I feel more secure with them. You want to get to you. I call it the side door. The front door is clogged with resumes. Very few are being read, and that's not the way you get a job anymore. It's very old school. You want to go through the side door, develop the relationships beforehand, so that the interview is not formal in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And another one of the things I tell my students here at MI and my clients is anything you write on the resume has to be defended or explained. So tell me the story of this. Tell me the story of that. That tells me, are you engaging? Are you someone I want to live with? I'm going to spend more time with you. I spend more time with my team than I do with my wife. And I adore her. But she's busy too. She runs a company, and I'm busy all day, and we see each other a few hours a day. I have to live with these people. So one of the first things that comes up in the interview after it's done is, did I like the person? Are they someone I can live with? Are they fun to be around? Are they engaging? Do they smile? Are they someone I could live with when it's 9 o'clock at night and we have a deadline? There's no attitude. They're upbeat. They're creative. They're happy. They're focused. This is someone I can live with. And that's so much of what being engaging in an interview is. That's why that's so important.
Oh, absolutely. So you mentioned sort of earlier in our conversation, the need for patience as you're going through this process. How long do you find that the interview process typically takes? And do you have advice for people who are finding, the length of time to be frustrating? Like, do you have advice for them in terms of how to find that patience?
Oh, boy. First of all, one of the things I do in the courses I teach here at Musicians Institute, my book, by the way, is the textbook for the courses. One of the things we work on is their budget, both financial and time budgets. If you're in desperation, if you're living above your means, that makes it that much tougher to wait things out. So probably the first thing is looking for ways to cut expenses. So you don't have to sleep in your car, so you don't have to worry about, if I don't get this job, I can't pay the mortgage or I can't pay the rent this month and I'm out on the street. So that's one thing. Then in the process of doing it, I find what's very valuable, and there's sections in my book about this, exercise regularly, stay out of your head, compress your day, which means if you can only look for work so much in one day. There are only so many people to contact, so many postings to answer, so many lunches and breakfasts and coffees you can do. So go to the movies. If you have 3 hours of work, don't sit at home for 8 hours worrying for 5 and then spending 3 doing what you have to do. Go to the movies, come back. Oh, now I have a deadline. I have to get dinner ready by 6 o'clock, or my spouse is coming home and I need to be with them. So you'll get the work done in that time. So do things that will keep you from not being crazy. Stay out of your head. Have regular things you do. You go to Starbucks every morning for a couple of hours. You go to the library. You take a walk. Whatever it happens to be, you don't have to focus that heavily. Trust the universe. You've planted the seeds. You've done everything you could today. Good job. You didn't get a job. It's farming, one step at a time. You did everything you could. Now go play.
I really like that advice, especially when you talk about regular activities. I think it's really helpful, especially for those people who may be unemployed, because say you've been laid off and it's the first time in your life you've ever not had structure. And so not only do you not know what to do with your day, but you're really upset that this is happening and, you're really unhappy. And going through that can actually really negatively impact your search. And so I think creating that structure for yourself and those regular activities can keep you moving kind of in a forward direction rather than going backward.
We're programmed as human beings to go to the negative, so you need to stay out of your head.
Right.
If it means volunteering, whatever it is, so you can be around other people and take some of the attention off yourself. No one's going to die here. So you're just unemployed. You won't be unemployed forever. You will find work. It's okay. Just try to stay sane. Do something else. Be around people. Give to others. Take less attention off yourself, and things will turn around for you. They will. You've done the work you needed to do. Now you just have to wait and let things happen.
Right. So one of the other things that I've noticed that comes up as a point of frustration for many of my clients is the fact that when you apply to a job or say you even go for an interview, oftentimes if you haven't been selected, you just don't hear back. And they tend to take it really personally. I don't know if this is an issue that you encounter, if you maybe have some advice for people that do encounter this situation.
That's a real 20th century holdover. That in the olden days, people and companies would get back to you and thank you for coming in, and we received your resume. That's not done anymore. I've had clients and students who said, I interviewed with them. It seemed to go well. I haven't heard from them. They haven't called in 3 weeks. And my answer would be, you have heard from them. They didn't call. They're not interested. Move on. We have to let go of that notion that someone's going to get back to us. They don't. They don't acknowledge they got the resume. They don't necessarily acknowledge they met with you. You may not hear for months that they hired someone else. So that was the answer. Move on.
Right, absolutely. And, I think there are situations, I've had situations where I interviewed for something, it got put on hold, and a year later they called me up. And, that's really nice when that happens, but that's really not what you should be assuming is going to happen. You shouldn't make up excuses. You need a job now. So if you don't hear back, it's just best to move forward.
Yeah.
So another piece that I really wanted to touch on with you is sort of personal branding. In terms of sort of positioning yourself for interviews and going out and positioning yourself for a new career, can you talk a little bit about the personal brand that you encourage your students to develop there at the Musicians Institute? I know, for example, I know when you and I met like 10 years ago, I remember you telling me, that I should start signing up to do speaking engagements, for example, and that I should start to look for opportunities to brand myself. And I think at the time you were probably one of the only people that had that kind of insight and foresight to say that this was something that I should consider. So that just really stuck with me. And I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about your perspective on personal branding.
Brand is reputation, brand is relationship. It's what others think of you, whether that's Coca-Cola or you in the marketplace. So one of the things I do with my students here at Musicians Institute, both in the courses and in the coaching we do for them, is you have to develop a reputation as being a professional. Not a kid, not a flaky wannabe rock star, but someone who shows up on time with a good attitude, who's creative, who works hard, who is reliable. That's a huge part of it. As you're going to probably get work, and most people, you talk to adults, 95% of them will say, I got my job because I knew somebody. Somebody referred you. Somebody said, this woman is good. She's got a great attitude. She's thoroughly professional. She's a joy to work around. She works her butt off. She's just terrific. You'll love her. That is your brand. That is your reputation. That's going to get you in the door. That you've worked with other people and they speak highly of you. Again, people hire who they know and trust. If you were to say to me, this is a person I'd like you to meet with, I think they'd be perfect, because of my respect for you and your professionalism, I would meet with them. Angela said, this is someone I should meet with. I trust her. I'm going to meet with them. And for sure, they will be someone that that is who you said they were. Now, whether they fit with the team for that particular job, that's another matter, but they got in the door and they got to meet with me. And it's not such a formal interview because you've already pre-sold them to me. You've pre-screened them. Angela says, you're great. Let's see how you can fit here. And you will have coach them, and they'll know how to tell a good story, and they will have researched what we do at Musicians Institute and what I know and what I need and what I've done, and then we'll see if there's a match. That's the way it normally works.
Oh, I think that's such a good point. Exactly in line with what you're mentioning. I have a client who was in the field of education that worked at a university in the administrative, department and wanted to go to corporate. And is now in a strategy type of role at Hilton. And I actually connected him in that exact way, where I reached out to the person who was hiring and said, I know that this person has a really different background, but I think you should talk with them. I think there's something there. And they sat down, and the interview was so informal that it was over hot wings. So I remember my client said, "Wow, I wore a suit and then we had hot wings." But he did get that job, and he was able to transition literally from education to corporate strategy, just because he had the introduction. But I think if he'd applied online, he never would have made it past the HR filter because his resume absolutely didn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes good enough is good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Could that person have found someone better for the position? Maybe. Did they have the time? Probably not. Would this person have worked for the job? Obviously, they did. So we're not talking about CEO level or C-level positions here. People are busy. They need someone to fill a slot. Angela said, talk to this person. By God, I'm going to talk to this person. I have great respect for Angela. I know she's a pro. She says this person's worth talking to. That's it. I'm done. When can you come in?
Right, absolutely. So in the beginning of the interview, I mentioned, and you mentioned it also, that your new book that you just released in April is called 101 Ways to Find Work and Keep Finding Work for the Rest of Your Life. And you mentioned that people often have 6 to 7 careers over the course of their lifetime, especially millennials. But how often do you find people are switching jobs these days?
Depends on the field. The way to approach it is you ain't going to be there that long. You need to always keep looking. And that's something we work with our performance students here. You're always freelancing. You're always hustling for the next job. It's like what's been true for musicians and people in the entertainment business is now true for the rest of the country. Everybody's a freelancer. So people in the movie business, they get on a shoot, the first thing they do is make friends with everybody, because when the shoot's over, they have to find another shoot, and they're going to be taken by someone who likes working with them onto the next shoot. So it's just something you need to get used to. How long a job's going to last depends on the field. But I would always keep one eye open as a recommendation for what's next. So everyone has 2 jobs. One is their job, and the other one is marketing themselves for the next job and the next job and the next career. It's what I call it's thinking of yourself as a business. You can't rely on one client. You always need to forage for more people, more opportunities. What's next? Not out of disloyalty to the company, but just as a recognition of the nature of the workplace. The company's going to merge, and you're going to be out of work, or you're going to get bored, or you're going to get a degree and want to do something else.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, I really think that this exact issue is what separates people from who are really succeeding and doing very well from those who are struggling. Because, when their company does merge or when they do have layoffs, if they haven't been looking and networking and, laying that foundation, they may be out of work for a year or more while they try to do that, especially in cities. I'll say, I'm based here in Memphis, and the number of new job opportunities, it's more limited here than it is in a bigger city. And so if you do a job, especially something that's very specific, it can be difficult to find another job if you're suddenly in a pinch. And so it's very important to always kind of be, farming, as you mentioned, planting those seeds so that you're taken care of in the future.
It's a new world, so it requires a new way of thinking. It's a freelance economy, so you're always looking for work. Now, the reason what we're doing at Musicians Institute is unique and it is transformative. We are embedding a course program, training students from day one on how to market themselves and what their brand is and how to network. Because there's a natural resistance among artists, and there's a natural resistance among everybody. I don't want to look for work. I have a job. Well, it's a new world. Sorry, this is the way it works now. So you have your job and you're marketing for the next job and planting seeds and deepening relationships. Sorry, that's how it is. And what we're doing is preparing our students for the way the world is now, not the way we'd like it to be or the way it was in the 20th century. I tell people, if you want happy answers and you want happy outcomes and easy answers, go see a movie. Life don't work like that.
Right. And I think it also comes down to being sort of the CEO of your own career and taking ownership. In the past, many employees could wait for their company to offer them training, for example, in order to stay up to date on their skill set. And if your company does offer that, that's great. But I don't think, if your company doesn't offer the training that you need and that you need to be competitive in your next job, my advice would be to continue to seek out that training and to do it on your own if you have to.
You never stop learning. You're the architect of your career. And the way I approach the artists here, we have so many talented musicians here. I say to them, you have a gift you were given by God or the universe, whatever your beliefs are. And you came to this school to increase your abilities, and you want to share that gift with the world. That's your responsibility. So you need to do whatever you have to do to share that with the world. And it's not simply playing. It's that people know you and respect you and will refer you. And that's the heart of everything, is to share that gift with the world. You were given that. And I think everyone in this world has gifts. It may take them a while to discover them, but they have gifts, and it's their job, in a sense, on a very foundational level, to share that with the world and do whatever they have to do. And part of that is letting people know what the brand is and why they should work with you.
Yes, and when you say letting people know what the brand is and why they should work with you, I think that goes back to looking at yourself like you're your own company or your own product, and being willing to talk about it without being shy. And you don't need to come across in a way like you're bragging, but you need to be upfront, because nobody else is going to be there in the interview to explain to your new employer why you'd be a great fit. You have to be comfortable to talk about yourself and to really put it out there.
If you did it, it's not bragging.
Right.
That's it. That's what you can deliver. You can say, I'm a great keyboard player. These are some of the things I've done. Here's some stuff on YouTube. Here's some of the CDs that have been manufactured. You can come see me play tonight with a band. I didn't say I was the greatest keyboard player in the world, but these are the styles I can play in, and I can do the job for you. That's true. If you say I'm the greatest keyboard player in the history of the world, then no. Probably not. But you have to have respect for your own talents and what you can contribute to other people's efforts. And it's a cheat to the world. This is not, I tell my students all the time, this isn't about you, it's about the world. It's about sharing your gift for the world. And your shyness or modesty need to not get in the way of that gift being shared with the world. That's why you came here, so people can hear your music, right? And they go, yeah. I said, okay, knock it off. People need to know this. And they get it. But it's a training, because there's a natural resistance among artists. There's a natural resistance among most people to selling themselves. Why do I have to do that? I didn't come to the Sales Institute. I came to the Musicians Institute. I'm a chemist. I should just do work on my chemistry. No. You're in sales. Everybody's in sales. Sorry. You don't have to like it. You just have to do it. I say it's a new habit, like brushing your teeth. I wouldn't say to a student, go home and brush your teeth. Isn't that fun? They'd say, well, fun. Crazy? It's not. It's just a habit. Good. Selling yourself, new habit. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're going to have to do so people can share your gifts.
Exactly. And, I think a lot of times our hesitancy towards, being open can sometimes come from maybe when we're children and we're told not to brag or to kind of just fit in. And I think it's important, again, to remember that this is the time to be really straightforward about your talents.
Mm-hmm. It's about them, not you. I have something you need.
Right.
You need to know about this.
Right.
I can help you. I can support you. I can do good things for your enterprise. You want to know me.
Absolutely. Well, is there any other advice about job seeking that you'd like to share with our listeners today? I know that you're just so creative in your approach. So, if there's anything else you'd like to share, it'd be great.
Yeah, one last thing, which is actually I'm presenting a paper at the Global Conference on Education in a couple of weeks, and this is one of the things I'm going to talk about there. And the paper I'm doing is about the work we're doing at Musicians Institute called Transforming How Career Training is Delivered in Higher Education. And one of the key points about it is what we're training our students in, which is what I call the multiple income streams approach. If you imagine your particular skill set, and we'll use Musicians Institute as an example, in the center of a wheel, imagine a wheel, in the center of the wheel is musician. And the spokes coming out from that center are all the different things you can do, dealing with yourself as a business to produce income, produce revenue for that musician. So for a musician, you can teach, you can write, you can work in a studio, you can work on tour, you could be an engineer, you could do arranging, you can do producing, you can do product demonstrations, you can write books, you can write articles, all ways that support the brand, that support the basic talent, and ways where you can always generate revenue. And I think this model is useful for everyone, that you don't want to, that's why the book is called Finding Work, not Finding a Job. How many different ways can you derive revenue from what your talents are? And it's the same way a business approaches things. You don't have one client. If one client goes out of business, your business goes out of business too. This way, you always have ways to make money, and you're never bored. Because if you come off the road as a touring musician after 6 months, now you can teach. Now you can go back to writing the book. You can write some articles. You can do some product demonstrations, whatever it happens to be. So that's what I'd leave you with, is that's the way to approach anyone to approach their career, the multiple income streams approach, that you are a business. How many different ways can you make money?
I think that's such a great point. It reminds me a little bit of investing. When you're investing your money for retirement, you're always trying to sort of diversify how that money is invested, and it helps you to minimize risk. And so, what you're talking about is really expanding your personal brand, but also, helps you to minimize risk. So if one of those income streams goes away, you're not just at zero, you may be less, but then you only have to replace some portion, and you don't have to replace the entire, lump of income.
Right. If the lead singer in the band breaks his leg, well, that's okay. I can do more teaching, and in a couple of months we'll reschedule the dates on the tour. We'll go back on tour. So the other part of it is not, in addition to the minimized risk, is you're never bored. You're always doing something interesting. I'm not teaching at the moment. I'll be teaching next month. Right now I'm in the studio and I'm producing an album. Wow, good for you. You always do something interesting. Yeah, I'm a musician. I do all kinds of stuff.
Right. Well, so I'm a big fan of your work, and I know, our listeners can go out and buy your book, 101 Ways to Find Work and Keep Finding Work for the Rest of Your Career, on Amazon.com. But you mentioned that you've also got some speaking coming up. So how can listeners contact you or learn more about you or come and listen to you speak?
I would try either LinkedIn or Facebook. That's where I live at the moment. So they can contact me in either way, and if they say once again, if they say they were referred by Angela, we link up. That's it. That's good enough for me.
Great.
Yeah, so that's the best way.
So are you listed on Facebook and on LinkedIn as Dr. Chaz Austin?
Yes.
Okay, great. And do you work with individual clients outside of the Musicians Institute?
I do, as time permits. I'm I'm running a department. We're building curricula, and I'm teaching here. So not a lot of extra time, but yes, I do work with clients outside of here.
Okay, excellent. I know that there'll probably be some folks that want to reach out to you. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Chaz, for joining me. The discussion today has been very helpful.
Thank you, Angela. Great questions. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And I have to say, as someone who coached you, I'm very proud of what you've done.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's great. It's a joy to see what you're doing and how you've taken your gifts and are contributing to other people. And I hope they appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's been going really great. I think you know that I always really enjoyed the job search process. And so it's really exciting every day to get up and, see what other people are doing and to kind of help them both find jobs that are more interesting to them and also jobs that pay more money. So it's been very rewarding.
Yes, great.
Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Please tune in next week for another edition of the Copeland Coaching Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Copeland Coaching Podcast today with your host, Angela Copeland. Tune in next time to get more great tips on turning your job search into a slam dunk.